Hey everyone, and welcome back to English Listen and Learn. I'm Ben,
And I'm Anna.
and we're ready to dive into a topic
Yeah.
that I think we all deal with every single day,
Mm,
and that is mastering the art of conversation.
I like it.
Because think about it, we are constantly communicating,
Yeah.
whether it's at work or at home with our loved ones, or even, just ordering a coffee.
Right.
But how often do we stop and think about how to actually get better at it?
That's true.
So that's what we're going to unpack today. We're going to go through a few tips and strategies
Okay.
for expressing yourself, authentically navigating those tricky situations,
Right.
and just building deeper and more meaningful connections with the people around you.
Sounds good.
So let's jump right in
Okay.
with a concept that I think a lot of people struggle with,
Okay.
and that is being truthful without oversharing.
Right.
So let's say you've had a rough day at work and your partner asks you, "How was your day?"
Mm.
Now you could go into like every little detail
Mm. Oh, yeah.
about all the frustrations of the day,
Right.
but what could you do instead?
Well, I actually like to think of it as an elevator pitch.
Ooh,
Like, imagine you're in an elevator with your CEO and you have a very limited amount of time
yeah, okay,
to make an impression.
right.
You're not going to give them every single detail of your project, right? You're just going to hit those high points.
Right.
You're going to give them the takeaway.
Yeah,
So instead of overwhelming your partner with information, you could say something like, "It was a bit of a whirlwind, but I'm really looking forward to relaxing with you now."
I like that.
It's honest, it acknowledges your feelings, but it also sets a boundary
Yeah.
and leaves space for further conversation if your partner wants to know more.
Yeah. It's kind of like choosing your words carefully to
Exactly.
convey the essence of what you want to share,
Right.
but without getting bogged down in all the details.
Yeah, and on that note, being a good communicator isn't just about expressing yourself effectively. It's also about actively listening to what others have to say.
Yes. Have you ever been in a conversation where you just feel like the other person
Oh, yeah?
isn't really listening?
All the time.
Yeah, they're just waiting for their turn to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so frustrating
It is.
because active listening is so important.
It really is.
And it's not just about hearing the words. It's about actually absorbing what they're saying,
Right.
processing their emotions, and understanding their perspective.
Absolutely.
And there's this great analogy
Okay.
that compares our words to a well and a waterfall.
I like that.
So what do you think about when you think about those two things?
Well, a well offers refreshing water, in measured doses.
Yeah.
And a waterfall is just this overwhelming torrent.
Right.
You can't really appreciate the individual droplets in a waterfall, can you?
No.
So I guess in a conversation, we want to be the well.
Right. Offering those valuable insights in a way that allows others to kind of absorb and appreciate them.
Exactly.
So instead of like rushing through a story and just kind of like word vomiting all the information,
Right.
try pacing yourself,
Right.
creating space for those pauses,
I like it.
and allowing the other person to kind of draw from that well of knowledge and experience that you have.
That's a good way to put it.
And this can be really powerful when you're trying to tell a story or make a point.
Okay.
Like imagine you're recounting a funny anecdote from your weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of rushing through it, you pause at a key moment,
Right.
like a cliffhanger.
Ooh, I like that.
It just creates that sense of anticipation,
Mm.
and it invites the other person to lean in
Right.
to hear what happens next.
I love it.
So it's like turning a conversation into this collaborative storytelling session,
That's great.
which is so much more engaging.
It is.
So we've talked about expressing ourselves being mindful listeners.
Right.
But what about those times
Yeah.
when we need to stand up for ourselves,
Oh, yeah.
to assert our boundaries or express disagreement?
Yeah, those can be some of the most challenging conversations to navigate, right?
Absolutely.
Because emotions can run high and we might fear damaging relationships or, creating conflict.
Yeah, it's so easy to just say something that you regret later.
Oh, yeah.
So how can we stand our ground but still maintain that respect and open communication?
Well, one incredibly powerful tool is something that we've already touched on briefly,
Okay.
and that is the power of the pause. So imagine you're in a meeting and someone criticizes your idea.
Right.
Now, your instinct might be to immediately jump in and defend yourself.
Oh, yeah.
But taking a moment to breathe before responding can make all the difference.
It's like hitting the pause button before you hit reply all on that heated email.
Exactly.
It just gives you a moment to collect your thoughts
Right.
and choose your words carefully.
So instead of reacting defensively,
Yeah.
you could say something like, "That's an interesting point." Let me consider that for a moment.
Okay.
It shows that you're taking their perspective seriously without necessarily agreeing with them.
Right, and it kind of projects that confidence
Mm-hmm.
and composure, which I think can be disarming
Absolutely.
in a tense situation.
It can.
I remember reading that Abraham Lincoln
Oh, yeah.
was a master of using silence.
He was.
Like he would just pause for what felt like an eternity
Right.
before delivering like a very carefully crafted response.
And think about the impact his words had.
Yeah.
Those deliberate pauses just added so much weight
Yeah.
to his arguments and made people really hang on to every single word.
It's true. It's like silence speaks louder than words.
Sometimes it does.
But it's not just about when we speak.
Right.
It's also about how we speak.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we get so caught up in our own heads
Yeah.
that we end up rambling or going off on these tangents.
It's easy to do.
And it just dilutes our message.
It does.
So how can we make sure that we're being clear and concise?
Well, think of it like packing for a trip.
Okay.
You want to bring the essentials, right?
Right.
You don't want to overstuff your suitcase with things that you'll never use.
So when we're packing for that crucial conversation,
Mm-hmm.
what are the essential items?
Well, I think the first thing is to have a clear destination in mind.
Mm.
What's the main point you want to get across?
Yeah.
What outcome are you hoping for?
So, for example, if you need to have a conversation with your boss about taking on a new project,
Yeah.
instead of just kind of launching into this vague explanation of why you're interested,
Right.
you could say something like, I'd like to discuss the possibility of leading the XYZ project. I've been following its development closely, and I believe that my skills in A and B would be a valuable asset to the team.
That's perfect.
It's just so direct and focused
It is.
that there's no room for misinterpretation.
Right. And it's also really helpful to structure your thoughts in advance,
Okay.
almost like you're creating an outline. Mm-hmm. This can be really useful for those more complex or emotionally charged conversations.
So, for example, if you're going into a conversation about a disagreement with a friend or a family member,
Right.
you could jot down like 3 key points that you want to address.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you can stay on track even if things start to get a little bit heated.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to an important distinction
Okay.
between conversational goals and conversational values.
Ooh, I like that.
It's not just about what you want to achieve,
Right.
but it's also about how you want to conduct yourself
Okay.
throughout that process.
So can you give me an example of that?
Sure. So let's say your conversational goal is to persuade your friend to try a new restaurant.
Okay.
But your conversational value might be to respect their opinion, even if they ultimately decide against it.
Oh, I see. So it's about approaching the conversation with integrity
Exactly.
and empathy,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't get your way.
Right, because ultimately relationships are more important than winning an argument
I like that.
or always getting your way.
It's true.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about how our words can actually shape the relationships that we have.
I like it.
So we've already talked about listening and empathy,
Right.
but there's another aspect that I think is often overlooked.
Okay. Tell me more.
Think about it. Are you approaching your conversations as a bridge builder
Okay.
or a lighthouse?
Ooh.
What do you think about when you hear those two things?
I like that analogy.
So a lighthouse stands tall and shines its light guiding ships to safety.
Right.
It doesn't chase after them.
Yeah.
It doesn't force them to follow its path. It simply offers that beacon of guidance.
So in a conversation, are we trying to like force our opinions on others? Or are we creating a safe space for them to kind of find their own way?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ben. And I think it comes down to, are we trying to control the narrative?
Right.
Or are we offering our perspective as a guiding light
Yeah.
and allowing others to navigate their own course?
I like that it's a really subtle shift,
It is?
but I can see how it can have like a profound impact on relationships.
It can. And this also ties into another crucial element, and that is kindness. Think about a time when someone spoke to you with genuine kindness,
Yeah.
even if you were disagreeing with them.
Right.
Didn't it make you feel heard and respected,
It does.
even if you didn't necessarily see eye to eye?
Yeah.
So instead of saying, you're wrong, you could say, I understand why you feel that way, but from my perspective.
Right.
It just acknowledges their feeling,
Yeah.
but also creates space for you to share your perspective.
It's that balance between assertiveness and compassion.
Exactly.
Before we move on to the final part of our conversation,
Okay.
I want to touch on one more thing. And that is how our words can kind of shape our relationships in terms of how we define ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something I've definitely struggled with in the past.
I think we all have.
And that is the tendency to define ourselves by labels or external validation.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into that trap, isn't it? We start to define ourselves by our job titles or, what other people say about us.
Yeah, like you're trying to fit yourself into this box
Right.
when in reality, you're so much more complex than that.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that can really limit our potential,
Yeah.
both in our personal lives and, in our communication.
Right.
So instead of saying, I'm just an assistant,
Right.
you could try saying something like, I play a key role in making sure everything runs smoothly.
Right. It just changes the whole energy of it.
Yes.
So I know we've covered a lot today,
We have.
and it might feel overwhelming to try to implement all of these things at once.
You can.
But even just focusing on one or two areas
Right.
can make such a big difference
It can.
in the quality of your conversations.
Absolutely. And I think as we become more mindful of our communication patterns,
Right.
we'll start to notice those subtle shifts and how they impact our relationships and
Yeah.
our overall well-being.
One thing that I found to be super helpful is just becoming more aware of my inner dialogue.
Mhm.
What kind of language am I using with myself?
Right.
Am I being encouraging, or am I constantly putting myself down?
Yeah, that inner voice is so powerful.
It is.
It shapes our beliefs and our self-perception and ultimately
Right.
the way we interact with the world.
It's like having a conversation with yourself
Mm-hmm.
that can either lift you up or hold you back.
And we have the power to change it.
We do.
We have the power to rewrite that script.
I love that.
Choose to speak to yourself with kindness
Yeah.
and compassion.
I think that's something we can all work on.
I agree.
And you know
But-
what? As you start to shift that internal dialogue,
Right.
it starts to spill over
It does.
into your external communication.
It does. You'll become more confident and authentic
Yeah.
and more empowered to really express yourself fully.
So as we wrap up
Okay.
this deep dive into the art of conversation,
Right.
I want to leave you with one final thought. The words we choose today can transform our future.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's true not only for our external conversations, but
Yeah.
also for those internal conversations that we're having with ourselves.
It's all connected, Ben.
It is.
The way we speak to ourselves shapes the way that we speak to the world.
It really does.
And vice versa.
So let's choose our words wisely,
Yes.
with kindness, with clarity,
Mm.
with intention, and with the power to create that positive change.
I love it.
It's been great chatting with you, Anna.
Likewise, Ben.
And until next time, keep those conversations flowing.
Bye, everyone.
Let's learn some new vocabularies together. Elevator pitch. It means a short and clear explanation of an idea, usually given quickly. Example 1. He gave an elevator pitch about his business idea in just 30 seconds. Example 2. A good elevator pitch can help you impress potential employers. Hit those high points. It means to focus on the most important or best parts of something. Example 1. In my speech, I only had time to hit those high points and skip the small details. Example 2. The teacher hit those high points of the lesson before giving us homework. Whirlwind. It means something that happens very fast and feels chaotic. Example 1. Their wedding day was a whirlwind of emotions and celebrations. Example 2. The first week of college was a whirlwind of classes, new friends, and activities. Word vomiting. It means talking too much without thinking or organizing thoughts. Example 1. I was so nervous during my interview that I started word vomiting. Example 2. She tends to word vomit when she's excited and can't stop talking. Overlooked. It means not noticed or ignored, either by mistake or on purpose. Example 1. She worked very hard, but her efforts were overlooked by her manager. Example 2. The small details in a contract are often overlooked, but can be very important. Thanks for watching. Until next time.